Today, we take a look at some reasons for optimism as the Islanders head into the home stretch for the battle of the last two playoff spots in the Eastern Conference. We have the latest injury updates on Alexander Romanov and Mathew Barzal, and a full preview of tonight's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast. Gil Martin, so glad you could join us today. Thank you for being part of the Locked On Islanders family and for making Locked On Islanders your first listen. We are free and available on all platforms. Lots to discuss on today's show, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, or maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, feel free to send us an email. The email address, lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. You could also follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnIsles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on Twitter at Ice Wars, NYR_VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis. And always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with fellow fans, game time or anytime. So please do reach out and let's talk some Isles hockey. Lots going on. We have 4 games left in the regular season. And in spite of it all, the Islanders have not clinched anything just yet. They are in essentially a 3-way battle for the final 2 playoff spots. And look, there's a couple of things that are sort of bottom line right now in this playoff hunt. Number one, you want to get into the playoffs, and there are 3 teams battling for 2 spots. Buffalo is still kind of on the outside looking in. They have 2 games in hand on everyone else. So if they win both of those games, they tie Florida and the Islanders. So I'm not saying, well, no, they come within 2 points. So I'm not saying they're dead, but they aren't looking good. And, realistically, there are a lot of reasons for optimism for the New York Islanders as we head into the home stretch. And we've talked about some of them on previous episodes. Number one, 3 of the 4 remaining games on the schedule for the Islanders are against non-playoff teams that if the season ended now, they would not make the playoffs. You have Washington, who is at NHL 500 and on a 4-game losing streak. You have Philadelphia, who is way under 500 and also on a losing streak. And Montreal, who is 12 games under NHL 500. All 3 teams that I mentioned now have 4-game losing streaks. And the other team that they're playing, Tampa Bay, at least a home game against the Lightning, which certainly bodes well. And look, with 3 out of their 4 remaining games at home, the Islanders are 9 games over 500, 22-13-3 at home. So that certainly is helpful, both where the games are being played and, except for tonight's game, who the games are being played against certainly help. The other thing that I think helps, and maybe it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but the Islanders have a lot of players right now on their roster who are experienced at high-pressure situations like this. Certainly both goaltenders Semyon Varlamov and Ilya Sorokin have played in high-pressure situations. Varley in the NHL playoffs. Sorokin has some NHL Stanley Cup playoff experience, but also won a championship in the KHL. So he's no stranger to playoff hockey and high-pressure playoff situations. And then you have the core of this Islanders team. You have a lot of veterans. And while having a lot of players on the quote-unquote wrong side of 30 sometimes is detrimental, the fact that so many of these players have been on long playoff runs, whether it's with the Islanders or with someone else, certainly helps. Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, J.G. Pageau, Kyle Palmieri, Josh Bailey, almost all of your defense core on paper, with the possible exception of either Samuel Bolduc, even Noah Dobson has playoff experience, although, Sebastian Aho, not so much, Bolduc, not so much, Wotherspoon, not so much. Romanov has NHL playoff experience with Montreal. So, Zach Parise has that experience with New Jersey and Minnesota, but not with the Islanders. Scott Mayfield has it, Casey Cizikas, Martin, Clutterbuck, all of these guys. Engvall has it with Toronto, Bo Horvat with Vancouver. The core of this team is battle tested when it comes to the playoffs, and don't underestimate that fact as being a positive. Here's what Brock Nelson told the Hockey News about it. He said, I think we've had quite a few guys that have been around and have been in pressure situations. For us, it's an opportunity. We're trying to get into the playoffs, and we kind of control our own destiny. And if we go out there and take care of business, it should work out. And I think Nelson hits it on the head after after Tuesday night's results. And today, none of the three teams, the Islanders, Panthers, and Penguins, are in action. So after Tuesday's results, where the Penguins lost and, the Panthers won, the Islanders do control their own destiny. Now, they may not control whether or not they finish as the first wild card or the second wild card, but they control their own destiny when it comes to making the playoffs. If the Islanders win their last 4 games, nothing else will stop them from making the Stanley Cup playoffs, because the Penguins, if they win their last 4 games, are still a point behind. And even Buffalo, if they win their last 6 games, would still not pass the Islanders. And the other thing is this: you want to be the first wild card if you can help it, because I think everyone in the NHL would like to avoid playing the Boston Bruins in the first round. But if you're just worried about getting in, right now the Islanders have a goal differential of +13. The Panthers also have a goal differential of +13. The Penguins -5, the Sabres -7, the Senators -8. But my point is, the Islanders and Panthers, as far as goal differential, which over 78 games, I think does tell us something, they look like a team that should be in the playoffs, that should be stronger and a little bit more consistent than the Pittsburgh Penguins. Add to the fact that the Islanders, out of the 3 teams fighting for these 2 spots, have the best goaltending out of the 3 teams by far, and allowed fewer goals by far. The old adage, offense sells tickets, defense wins championships. The Islanders have allowed 214 goals in 78 games. The Penguins, 254 goals. That's 40 more than the Islanders. And Florida, 261. That's 47 more goals than the Islanders. Now, Florida and Pittsburgh have scored more goals than the Islanders by a fairly large margin. But again, if defense wins championships, advantage Islanders when it comes to trying to qualify, and the Islanders have to hope that that is indeed the case. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We'll talk a little bit more about reasons for optimism. We'll have the latest injury updates on Mathew Barzal and Alexander Romanov, and a whole lot more. All that still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers to threes drained. And yeah, you could use your knowledge of the Islanders on FanDuel as well. Check out the odds for tonight's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning on the FanDuel app. And FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So the latest injury news as far as the New York Islanders are concerned. Basically speaking, Alexander Romanov did not practice with the team on Tuesday, and neither did Mathew Barzal. Now, Barzal did skate on his own earlier in the day, but did not practice yet with the team. I am still projecting that he is not back tonight, probably not going to be back for the last road game of the year, but those last two home games perhaps is when Mathew Barzal gets a chance to possibly take to the ice. As for Romanov, he is still listed as day-to-day. Really be extremely helpful for the New York Islanders to just get Romanov back on the ice as soon as possible. I'm hoping he can play tonight, but we have to see. He may very well be a game time decision, and we'll see what Lane Lambert does. Again, you know, the Islanders as a team, there are a lot of things this team needs to fix, but there are also, as I said earlier, a lot of reasons for optimism. And, you know, Kyle Palmieri, for example, when you get to this point of the season with the race that we're in and how tight it is, you want to go out there and compete for your teammates and with them, and you got to enjoy it. At the end of the day, it's a pretty special opportunity to be in this situation, and we're excited in this room for that opportunity. So the Islanders really trying very hard to wrap up this playoff berth and move on and get a chance at, you know, having another one of those long playoff runs. And I guess, you know, you hear a lot of rumbling and a lot of comments on social media, on our YouTube page, about the Islanders, whether or not, if they don't make the playoffs, will the New York Islanders make a change at head coach? Will it affect the potential future of Lou Lamoriello as the team's general manager? I can safely say that those things will be determined after the season. I think that if the Islanders don't make the playoffs, it makes Lane Lambert's job security a lot shakier. I think if they do make the playoffs, his odds of returning go up significantly. But the other factor is that if Lou Lamoriello retires, would his successor, whether it's his son, who's currently the GM at Bridgeport, or if they bring in somebody else, would he or she want to bring in their own person to coach the team? So that sort of becomes the wild card if even if the Islanders do qualify for the playoffs, as far as Lane Lambert is concerned. As far as Lou Lamoriello is concerned, I think he has more job security than Lane Lambert. Lou Lamoriello already in the Hall of Fame. Yes, his contract is rumored to expire at the end of this season, which I think the league year runs through June 30th or July 1st. Even if the Islanders miss the playoffs, I get the feeling, and I'm not saying this is the route that the team should take, but I get the feeling that the Islanders management is going to let Lou Lamoriello himself decide when and how he is ready to step down as GM of this team. And yeah, I don't always agree with the overall philosophy and execution of that philosophy of Lou Lamoriello. I'm not arguing that. I like some of his moves. I don't like other things that he does. But I think that management has faith in Lou Lamoriello, and management is going to say to him at the end of the year, do you want to come back and sign a 1, 2, whatever year contract, or are you ready to retire? Or, I don't think they're going to just haul off and fire him at this point. Now, I've been wrong before, but based on my understanding and knowledge of the players in this drama, so to speak, that is what I expect the Islanders to do. And it'll be interesting to see how the owners decide what happens next with Lou Lamoriello. Now, if the Islanders make the playoffs, I doubt Lamoriello is fired. I doubt he's fired if they don't, but I'm very, very sure he's not going to get fired if they do make the playoffs. And again, it's a question of, is he ready to retire, or does he want to keep on working? Look, he is 80 years old. He is pretty energetic and certainly seems to have all of his wits about him. And, it's a very time-consuming and difficult job, even for a young and healthy person. But Lou Lamoriello, I think, is ultimately going to make the decision as to when he decides to step down as general manager of the New York Islanders. But that is a drama that will be played out once the season is over. As of right now, the key for the Islanders is 4 games left, 3 at home, 3 against teams that are not going to make the playoffs. Go out there and claim what's yours. And one other thing I am going to say, and I've watched Lane Lambert throughout this season. I've watched him grow as a coach. I've called him out when I think there were issues, and I've backed him when I thought he should be backed. But here's the thing. Win, lose, or draw for these last 4 games, if this team does not come out ready to play all 4 games, if their effort isn't there, that will speak volumes about whether Lane Lambert belongs back behind the bench for the New York Islanders next season. Because, look, you could say what you want about this team's lack of scoring, the injuries that have hurt this team over the course of the season, losing Barzal, losing Pelech, losing Wahlstrom, Clutterbuck. We've been through all of these injuries throughout the year. But having the team emotionally ready to play is part of the job of any NHL head coach. And with the season on the line, look, they could lose 3 of the 4 remaining games, but if they don't play well, don't give effort, don't show heart, That reflects on the head coach. And for Lane Lambert's sake, they better show up and be ready to play when the puck drops tonight and in the 3 games remaining on the season after tonight, because that is critical. We have got more to get to on this episode of the show. We'll preview tonight's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, plus our Islanders' birthday of the day, a very steady defenseman who was a member of the Islanders in the late 80s. All that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? Well, if you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So tonight, Islanders and the Tampa Bay Lightning at UBS Arena. It is a 7:30 Eastern time start, and yeah, it'll be on MSG. So check your local listings, but again, we'll have the local broadcasters. And another piece of good news, while this game against Tampa Bay is clearly the most difficult game on paper that the Islanders have in their final 4 contests, the Bolts are playing Wednesday at Madison Square Garden. So while the Islanders are rested, having had 3 days off in between games, Tampa Bay is coming off a back-to-back. And realistically, whichever goaltender they play against the Rangers, it is more likely that the other goalie is going to play against the Islanders. Andrei Vasilevsky, we all know about him, how well he played in the Lightning's 5-0 win over the Islanders this past weekend. He is 34-20-4 this year. The 2.57 goals against average and the .918 save percentage, not Vasilevsky-esque, but he really is coming into form right now. And in the last 3 games that the Lightning have played, they've given up a grand total of 1 goal. Now, that's before last night's game against the Rangers, but 1 goal in your last 3 games shows you that, A, your goaltending is very, very solid, and your team defense is solid. So the Lightning clearly already transitioning to defense. We know Nikita Kucherov, he leads the team with 106 points, 29 goals, 77 assists, 37 of those on the power play. And the Islanders need to stay out of the box. Tampa Bay, second in the league with the man advantage at 25.3% success rate on the power play. Their PK in the middle at 15th in the league, a little better than 80% on the kill. Braden Point, 48 goals as of now, gunning for 50 with 5 games left on the schedule. Steven Stamkos, 33 goals. Brandon Hagel, 27. Alex Killorn, 24. So Tampa Bay certainly more than capable of scoring. Their top line, Point, Stamkos, and Kucherov, 3 talented, fast, dangerous players. Nick Paul centers the second line with Brandon Hagel to his left, Ross Colton to his right. Anthony Cirelli, Patrick Maroon, and Alex Killorn are the third line with Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, Tanner Jeannot, and Corey Perry making up a physical fourth line for Tampa Bay. On the defense, Victor Hedman and Nicholas Perbix are the top pairing. Darren Radish and Mikhail Sergachev, the second unit, and the third duo, Ian Cole and Eric Cernak. The goaltenders, as we mentioned, Andrei Vasilevsky, one of the best in the business, and Brian Elliott. Well, the Islanders going to face one of them. Now, here's the other thing. Tampa Bay still hoping to catch Toronto in the standings, but not going to be easy for them. And depending on whether or not Tampa Bay beats the Rangers on Wednesday, they may or may not start to rest some players. If they lose to the Rangers, they would probably have very little chance of catching Toronto. And then we may see them start to rest some guys, which also could benefit the Islanders as well. So big game. Islanders need to play defense first, be smart in their own zone, and not allow too many high danger chances. And they're going to need some outstanding goaltending from Ilya Sorokin. Time for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today is the 58th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Gerald Diduck. Diduck, drafted by the Islanders in the first round, 16th overall in the 1983 NHL entry draft, made his NHL debut in 84-85 when he became a regular, and stayed with the Isles through the 89-90 season. More of a defensive defenseman, had 3 seasons of 100 or more penalty minutes with the Islanders. His best offensive season, easily 1988-89, 11 goals, 32 points in just 65 games. After leaving the Islanders, played for Montreal, Vancouver, Chicago, the Hartford Whalers, the Coyotes, the Leafs, and the Stars. And believe it or not, Gerald Diduck did not retire until the 2000-2001 season. Played 932 career NHL games, 56 goals, 212 points. His best game as an Islander, we take you back to October 22nd, 1989 at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Put on your powder blue fleur-de-lis because the Quebec Nordiques are the visitors, and the Islanders end up with a 7-3 win over the Nordiques. Billy Smith, the goalie for the Isles. But for Gerald Diduck, a goal, 3 points, 2 assists. He was a +4, and he had 5 shots on goal, which was second only to Pat LaFontaine, who had 8. So a very happy 58th birthday to former Islanders defenseman Gerald Diduck. He is our Islanders birthday of the day. Thanks again for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. Now make your second listen game to game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every contest from across the National Hockey League with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Again, wishing everyone celebrating a happy Passover as we wrap up this week. Tomorrow, we'll be back with our key takeaways from the Tampa Bay game, plus a preview of this weekend's important action. So make sure you join us for that. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.